All right, we're live.
All right.
Hello and welcome. Hi, Lynn. How are you?
Hey, I'm very good, Sabine. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we are full steam ahead in this Power of Money series, and today I have the lovely Lynn Price with me, which I will introduce shortly. For those of you who are joining us live, we are streaming live on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and as well as YouTube. So if you're watching live, please be sure to engage. Let us know if you have questions, if you have comments. Put them in there in the chat so that we can see them and we can address them in real time for you. Also, if you are listening to this information and you feel that this is very, very helpful, we encourage you to share it with your network. You can just hit the share button on the screen that you're watching, whether you're on the phone or you are on your laptop. And so without further ado, real quick, if you're completely new to me, I'm Sabine Gideon. I am the CEO of Gideon Enterprises and the founder of She Leads Network. Obviously, I'm also the host of She Leads Now, a top-rated podcast focused on women business leadership and us gaining our power, our identity, so that we can continue to change the world. And so if you're completely new to me, you can learn more about me, about the work that I do. And if you're interested in partnering, feel free to check out sheleadsnetwork.com. Or feel free to send me a message and I'll be happy to answer that. And then, of course, if you're not already subscribed to the podcast, let's go ahead and change that. You can also access the podcast at sheleadsnetwork.com. So now that the housekeeping is out of the way, I am going to introduce Lynn. And so Lynn Price is a speaker, author, and attorney with over 20 years of experience providing creative business solutions to clients and executives. Over the last 2 decades, she has successfully negotiated over 11,000 agreements and counting. She is the author of the best-selling book, Negotiate It: How to Crush Your Fears, Develop Your Negotiation Muscle, and Gain Power in the Workplace. This book has also been highlighted in the Forbes article, The Best Books That Will Make You a Master Negotiator. So she did not come to play. She is coming here with practical tips, practical advice to help women, to help leaders negotiate in the workplace and in life in general. We're talking in the green room, like, negotiation skills are useful and even a toddler. So I'm excited to hear about your experience and your strategies. But before we do that, if you would, please just give us a high-level overview of your career journey and what brought you to this place and what made you shift into the space of focusing on writing this book and sharing this message.
Sure. No, I appreciate it. Yeah, like you said, my start was in law. I was in-house counsel for almost 20 years with a variety of industries, going from telecom, and I ended up in engineering construction industry for about 13 years. So that's where my biggest run was. And obviously, during those times, I did a huge amount of negotiation. So we got to a point where when you do that volume, it's pretty easy. You start to see a theme and a formula. And so that's kind of where I came up with the formula of the 3 R's, because I started seeing like there are ways to connect with people. There are ways to make this easier to where you can automatically engage in a negotiation no matter where you are. It doesn't have to be so academic that you have to sit down and go beautiful mind all plan it out. Like, you need to be able to remember something easy to engage with it and get it moving pretty quickly. So the pivot came. I was in-house counsel again for a national engineering firm. The pivot came when my spouse had a corporate relocation. And so we relocated, and then I was kind of, it's a big pivot. Like, okay, what do I want to do now? What's this next chapter going to look like? And so I thought, well, the low hanging fruit is negotiation, because I do it so much and it's so easy. And so I was talking to people, and they'd say, look, I'd say, well, yeah, but everyone knows how to do that. I'm like, not really. Like, really? Are you sure? Like, okay. So I started, kind of drafting what I would teach people, and then that ended up evolving into the book. And now that's what I do. My focus is just training people on how to become better, more efficient negotiators in all levels of their professional and personal lives. And then I also still love the in-house counsel aspect. So I still work with companies on how to make their in-house legal departments function more like a business and less like a law firm as well. That's just kind of the side project, but the main focus is really just teaching people how to be more effective negotiators.
I love it. I love it. And just to clarify, you work with individuals across the board, right? So
Mhm.
not
Oh, yeah,
necessarily just women. And so
absolutely.
what are some of the challenges that you've seen, or as terms of the clients and the questions that they ask you the most, or where you see the most resistance when it comes
Mhm.
to negotiations?
I think the number one thing that I see the most in this area is just, it's a fear because people haven't had formal training or they've heard a narrative that you're either born with it or you're not, which is absolutely not the case. This is a muscle like anything. And if you practice it, the quicker wins, that you get, the more confidence you build and the better you get. But it's recognizing that there is some fear surrounding this topic. And my theory is that a lot of people, uh, women and men, and it just depends on your personality. They hear negotiation. Like I say negotiation, but what they're hearing is conflict and confrontation. Like I don't like conflict. I don't like to fight with people. I'm like, well, yeah, I don't either. It doesn't have to be a fight and a conflict. You can just reframe it as, hey, I just need to communicate with this person. Like these are the things I can do. I need to call them and communicate what I can and can't do, and let's try to find a resolution. So it's really kind of overcoming that initial fear is the biggest hurdle I have right when I start working with people.
Yeah, I can imagine. And most of the outside of the business stuff that you do, are most of your clients focused on negotiating, whether it be, salaries or for promotions within their current organizations?
Yeah, that's the biggest one is kind of how I'm negotiating within my organization. So whether it's salary or promotion or even just influencing, because it could be a department manager that's having to negotiate laterally with another department manager. So how do you negotiate when you're similarly situated, where you're managing with your peer? Or I think even more helpful too is how do you manage up? How are you negotiating up with your boss when you see that there's a weakness and you can plug it or help them? Like what's the best way to do that so you're seen as being helpful and an asset and adding value versus like, what are you doing? Stay in your lane. It's kind of negotiating that fine line between the two.
Yeah, that's a really great point. For a couple different reasons. I do some negotiation training. I'm not the expert.
Mhm.
It's just a real big passion of mine. Just because my very first negotiation incident, we'll call it that, uh, was a little disheartening on many different levels. But it actually, it taught me to equip myself a lot better, and it taught me to, that it was okay to, build up my brag book, that it was okay
Yeah.
to build up my confidence and articulate, even as a young professional, articulate the value that I had added into the organization. And as time went on, because I was in talent acquisition and recruiting, individuals would obviously negotiate with me. I was picking up on their strategies,
Yeah.
on how they were able to effectively ask. But one of the things, oftentimes we do lump negotiations, and obviously today we're talking about money, so we will get into that, but we often only associate negotiations with money, right? So whether that be that initial offer that you get, or whether it be, moving into a different role in that promotion situation. But essentially every day we get the opportunity to quote unquote negotiate, or at least communicate what it is that we want, and hopefully get to the place where we get confident enough to start to co-create outcomes with our manager, with our teams, or whatever it is that we're speaking to in terms of resources. So with that, as we look at it from an organizational perspective, right? What are some key strategies that you have shared, or that you tend to share, and we can, if we want to throw in the 3 R's here,
Sure.
around, how to be an effective negotiator and how to really build that muscle and that skill?
I think the very first thing, and you're going to hear me say this multiple times, but the very first thing you do is I really recommend a philosophy that you need to adopt, and that is don't ask, don't get. Right? Do not expect people to read your minds. They're not going to. Or at least they aren't going to do it very well, and they aren't going to do it often as you need to. So it's don't ask, don't get. You have to speak up. It is a form of self advocacy. You have to raise your hand, and what I say all the time is you've got to make the ask. You know, be confident enough to raise your hand and say, hey, hold on, I need to get this out of this situation. Or if I'm in my organization, we're negotiating for the same resources. I want to hire someone, you want to hire someone, we can only hire one person. So I need to make my case, I need to make my argument. So it's communicating and explaining the why behind it. I think when people are pretty open with the here's why I need to do this, that just makes for more conversation. It allows for people to kind of come at it as solutions-based negotiation. A lot of people in this topic are hostage negotiators. They're amazing, and they've got the sexiest stories, and it's so fun, and I love it. That is not my background. I've come from a business background and from an entrepreneurial background. So for me, it's if we're negotiating most of the time, it's because we want to work together or we have something common that we're trying to achieve. So let's focus on the solution. So what do I need to do? What information do I need to get out of you to help generate a kind of a creative solution so we can both get something out of this. So it's a good opportunity for both of us because I'm not a fan of the, salt the earth, burn down the other party negotiation because, the world is just small and it's getting smaller. And I just don't see that as a long-term play. So what can I do to make sure that we're both happy with the outcome and how can we get creative to get there?
Yeah, yeah. So for those who are listening or will be listening to the audio, or even for those who are watching live, right? So we are in a space right now, especially at the time of this recording, where there's a lot of conversation around fear, around budget tightening,
Yeah,
around things happening, and often when that happens, people, especially women, we'll be like, okay, well, this is not really a great time, right? Like we will
yeah.
talk ourselves out of it, even if there were conversations in the mix. So, how do you typically coach or share with people or walk them through the process of really moving away from the fear of asking or whatever the external thing is that could be the barrier to getting to that place within themselves where they feel confident, where they feel worthy, where they feel that what they articulate and what they communicate is reflective of what it is that they're asking for.
Sure. I think again, the first thing you want to do is be very comfortable with expressing the why. Why am I asking for this? Why do I need this? Why do I feel like this is appropriate for me at this time? So that's factual. I deserve this raise because here's what it is. Here's what I can show. But I think more so it's changing your mindset because I think so many people, and like you said, you can talk yourself out of it. And I always tell people like don't negotiate against yourself. If you're negotiating with someone else, make the ask stop talking, like let them respond. But even in your own head, like, gosh, I wonder if I should blah blah blah. That's really your trigger. When you hear yourself say, I wonder if they would, I wonder if I should, that's when you start going through that analysis and you start figuring out like, okay, should I be asking? Should I be making the ask? Like what is it that I need out of this situation right now? But I think in terms of mindset, I think so many people at various stages of your career, you think, well, I can't ask. I don't have permission to ask because it's not in my title or it's not the position that I have right now. I shouldn't ask for something that I think I deserve. And that's just a mindset. Just you can lead at any point during your career. You don't have to wait for the leadership fairy to come and bop you on the head and say, boom, you're a leader now. You can just adopt that mindset and say, I'm going to be leading for myself right now, that I need to be in a different position in this organization, or I need to be, rewarded in a way that's consistent with what I'm giving to the value of the company. So it's just kind of getting comfortable in your head and in your mindset that first of all, if you're afraid, of how they're going to react, play out the extremes. Okay, what's the best possible thing? If I ask for a raise, the best possible thing is Sabine's going to be like, not only are you going to get this raise, I'm going to give you 20% more because you're amazing, right? Best case, right? Worst case, oh my God, I can't believe you asked that. You're fired. How dare you? Okay. So most likely what's going to happen in the middle? They'll either say, we have the money available now. We don't. We can do it when you hit these markers. It's most likely going to hit somewhere in the middle. So sometimes if you can just get that mind frame, like just swing between the extremes and know you're most likely going to hit in the middle, that can kind of take your temperature down and make you a little bit more confident.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And I think I don't know about you, right? But my first experience, as I was mentioning before, right? I got shut down real quick, but I didn't go in there with, a clear why. I didn't go in there with any real facts other than, I went on salary.com and I went on
Oh,
Glassdoor
yeah,
and this
yeah.
is what they said, the
Right.
market is, right? So I was very, very green. But that experience, right, also caused me to shut down where I was just like, okay, I'm never going to do that again. I don't want to
Yeah.
experienced that. And so I've shared this before, it's really understanding that sometimes even when you hear no, the no is not a definite no or infinite no, right? It
Yeah.
could just mean not right now. And what I found for myself and others that I've spoken to who are experts in this space is the thing that really shifts them from a practical standpoint is when they ask the question, the follow up of, okay, well, what would I need to do in order to, right?
Exactly.
Versus just sitting there and being like, oh my gosh, they said no, like I'll never
Yeah.
do this again. Following up to really understand, well, what would it take? I don't know about you, but like I know sometimes people are kind of like, I actually don't know what it would take. Like, let's figure it out. Or, next budget cycle, or when we have a next
Right.
conversation during the merit reviews and whatnot. So how do we get to a place where and we're focusing on women here? One, right, the resistance to ask. We already know that exists. There's the statistics around I think it's like 64%, and I may be butchering it, of women don't, negotiate salaries, and maybe what the details are on that. Don't negotiate salaries in the beginning, right? And so
Mhm.
that puts them in a spot. I actually, and just as a anecdote here, I had a conversation with someone recently who was looking for executive coaching and looking to move to the next level. And she was being promoted in-house. And, she had the opportunity to negotiate, but she asked her peers and they were like, you probably shouldn't ask for anything. And so she didn't ask. And so she just stepped into
Mm.
the role. And the conversation, I immediately went into coach mode. I was like, girl, no, always ask.
Yeah.
Always ask. The worst case scenario is that the answer that comes back to you is no. So I gave a couple of strategies that I know have worked for me and have worked for others. But what are some of those comeback strategies that you share with clients?
Sure. Well, I think actually this is a really good time to introduce the formula that I came up with, and that was the 3 R's. And that is, the first R is to be ready. So that is your um, preparation phase. So if you're going into that environment, like, knowing your preparation is knowing, like, what is the salary range on this? What are the perks that other people that are similar situated are getting? What are things that I could be asking for that would be acceptable within the confines of this organization? Because some organizations are more open to different things, and you kind of need to know that. So that really, that's the first R, is being ready and being prepared. The second one is being relatable. So, like you said, people will help people that they like. And I'm not saying like fake, being friends with someone. That's not what I'm saying at all. But if you can try to build an authentic connection quickly, that they'll be more willing to kind of engage with you and to have a conversation with you. So then you can maybe get okay, maybe not now, but when, get a roadmap for when this will be acceptable later. So it's getting, again, that authentic connection. And sometimes that is, if you're in that situation and you're being promoted internally, to say, like, thank you so much, like, I really appreciate this opportunity, here's what I like about it, here's where I think I can add some value, where you're recognizing and you're addressing their concerns, not how is this going to help me, but how am I going to be able to help the company, how am I going to help you as my boss achieve your goals, right? Because that's how I look great, is when you reach your goals. So how can I do that? And then the third one is just being reasonable, and that's the creative solutions based portion of it. Like, how do you really dig down and say, okay, you're here, I'm here. What kind of a bridge can I find to connect our two positions? And how, it might not be, yeah, we might not be able to do it now, but maybe in 3 months, 6 months, can we revisit it? When we revisit it, what things do you need to see from me to make this a win? What specific steps do I need to take between now and then to get there? And how can I help you, maintain your position and your authority, when we're moving that in that direction together?
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. And speaking of, things that are negotiable,
Hmm.
I feel like the list is expanding more and more, every year that passes by. What are some of the things that you've supported clients with negotiating, or you have even heard in the industry that people were able to negotiate that is probably like not even something that most of us would think about?
What's funny, well, recently, obviously, the biggest one is working from home. That seems to be a hot topic, because people were in quarantine, they were doing it, and now some companies are like, "You gotta come back," and people are putting the brakes on, like, "Hold on, is there a solution here where we can both have a win out of this?" But sometimes it can be, I've had people negotiate caps on travel if they're, traveling a lot, and then they'll negotiate, okay, I will only be gone, you know, once or twice a month, that I'm not willing to do more than that. As long as they're setting the expectations up front and they explain the why behind it. Like, it's not that I'm not a team player, but maybe I have young children at home. Maybe I have parents that I'm taking care of. Maybe I have obligations outside of this. Maybe it's just my mental health. Maybe, traveling is really difficult on me, and I just think I'm a better employee if I travel less. So it's, again, explaining the why behind what you want, and taking the time to examine, like, what is it? Like, if I'm unhappy in my job and I realize it is the travel, like, I like the people, I like the things that I'm doing, I like my company, but the travel's really getting to me, then that's when you need to raise the flag and say, okay, this is an issue, and what can we do about this? So it's having that time of self-reflection and self-assessment to be like, okay, what do I need here? What do I need to advocate for? To raise my hand and say, this isn't working for me. What can we do? And have a couple options, in your back pocket, because you never want to be the person that's just raising your hand like, hey, problem, hey, problem, hey, problem. No, you need to have a solution there. So have, you know, I mean, at least a one solution, that you think would be workable, or say, this is a problem. I've given it substantial amount of thought and I'm struggling to come up with anything. Can you help me brainstorm a solution that would work for both of us? Because this is an issue and I'm just struggling right now. So kind of releasing your ego enough to say, I need some help and please collaborate with me on this.
Yeah, I love those 2. So I started typing them into the comments. I
Mhm,
wanna make sure I captured. So the remote work,
mhm.
travel caps, or at least setting boundaries based on your lifestyle. Anything else you've seen that was successful?
Um, let's see, what else do I see? I mean, the variety is so much. I mean, I've seen car allowances. I've seen, there was one person that knew that they were going to this next level, and their personal style, like their presentation and how they're presenting to the world, had some critiques, and so she was ended up negotiating like a stylist and consultation to kind of
Ooh.
up her professional appearance, which is brilliant. That's such an easy thing to do, and it can have such a positive impact just on your mindset. Like, if you feel better and more confident about yourself, a lot of times you can project it. It's kind of a fake it till you make it situation. But really, I mean, it's really endless. If you see things, if you have a 360 review and you see things that are, on the, hey, needs attention, or, little weaker topics, maybe look at those and think, okay, um, communication is an issue with me, or confrontation is I'm having a hard time with that. So ask, can you negotiate a consultant or someone else to help, um, kind of, like, help build that, so it's not a weakness, but you can build it into a strength, or at least less of a weakness. So kind of look around to see where your weak spots are, and then see if you can use those to negotiate something to help you there.
I love that. I love that. So I have remote work, the travel caps, car allowances, a stylist, professional development, even a coach,
Mhm.
if that'll
Mhm.
be helpful. I think as you were talking, I was trying to think even for myself, like, what are some of the things that I've seen come through. I remember at one point, this executive wanted a Uber XL or larger for like trips to the airport, if they had to travel,
Right.
right? So it was just like it runs the gamut
Yeah.
of what people can negotiate. And to your point, at the end of the day, it's how do you create that win-win or that with them? What's in it
Mhm.
for me,
Yeah.
value proposition, so that they see that what you're asking isn't just about, oh, I because I want this, but this is the benefit to me as well as this is the benefit to you in the organization.
Yeah. One more thing I would add to that list too is, if you're in a corporate relocation, it can be the moving expenses. Not only just moving expenses, but there's a whole gamut you can run down with that. Whether they come in and pack you up, or if they do temporary housing, or how they're going to move you from point A to point B. But another thing that I've seen people do that I think is very helpful is to do what's called the trailing spouse or the trailing partner benefits. So
Mm.
if you're doing a corporate relocation and your partner is moving with you and that they're getting uprooted as well, it's putting them in touch with professional development people that can do their resume. Because maybe they were in a great job and they didn't have an up-to-date resume. They can help resume, they can help do Q&A, like, run throughs in terms of interview experience, to kind of dust the cobwebs off. And that can be very helpful to both your spouse and you, because you both want to be happy with that situation in any type of relocation, I'd say.
That's a really great point. I hadn't even thought of that. But yeah, you're right. If you're sacrificing, if the family is sacrificing,
Yeah,
then yeah, by all means, let's try to take care of the family.
right.
So shifting outside of I guess the workplace specifically, right? So you and I are obviously both business owners, and so it's negotiating every day, pretty much.
Absolutely.
Most of the time, I'm negotiating with myself, but nonetheless. I'm strengthening the muscle on a regular basis. So when it comes to for those who are, in their own businesses and, just gaining that comfort and that confidence in speaking to not necessarily from a asking perspective around negotiations, but knowing that, if they want to partner with others or they want a service or obviously a lot of the same skill set is around the same, right? Creating that win-win. But in this case, it's often a more like conversation of equals, right? So
Hmm.
when it is that type of situation for the entrepreneur who is looking at services in their business, who is looking at conversations that they need to have with clients around negotiating, contracts, what is there anything different? And maybe there isn't. Is there anything different that you recommend to the business owners versus those who are in the workplace?
Honestly, it's the same. I have the same playbook. I use the same formula, 3 R's, whether I'm working with an organization or if I'm working with vendors or service providers in my company right now that are looking to team with me. It's the same kind of thing. Is I want to be ready. I want to know exactly what I need out of the situation. I want to know the types of services you're providing. I want to know like how many of those services am I going to need and at what cost. I'm going to try to be relatable to you, to kind of find a connection and to create a relationship there, because I like to have working relationships with whoever I'm interacting with. And then in being reasonable, like just trying to find that solution and being solutions focused. I don't see it any different. It's just it's different because I think the difference is, if you and I, when we're back, when you were doing HR, and I know you were in engineering, field as well, when you're there, you can ask and they can say no. And then you're kind of like, okay, the answer's no. There's not many other venues to do it. But when you're on your own, you have the decision whether you want to push, whether you want to find somebody else, whether you want to escalate, you have a little bit more autonomy in what you're doing. But in terms of how you're approaching it, you still have to make the ask. No one's going to read your mind. It doesn't change. You still have to remind yourself that it's a don't ask, don't get situation. And really, I think in both situations, you got to watch ego, because I think so many times you can think inherently like, oh, I should know this, or that's be embarrassing if I don't know this, or especially in finance. A lot of times you're like, ooh, maybe I'm a little weak in this one topic and I'm afraid to ask because I think I'm going to look stupid.
Mm.
Well, you got to weigh that. Okay, so I might look stupid to a person who I'm paying to help me, or I don't get the answer and I make a bad decision that could affect me negatively in the long run. Like, what's a better path there? And I'm say every time, ask the dumb question, because again, most of the time, like if you're paying someone to help you, if it's a financial advisor or someone, like that literally is their job. So don't be afraid to ask a question of someone that you're paying to help you.
Agreed. Thank you for that. So there's this popular meme that I see across all social media, right? It's usually like, ask for what you want and then add tax, right? Like it's always
Yeah,
related
yeah,
to
yeah,
like female empowerment and whatnot.
yeah.
What are your thoughts on that strategy?
I think it's called the art of negotiation for a reason. I think there's a lot of ebb and flow. It can be very dynamic in terms of negotiation, and I'm a firm believer that you do have to have things that you can give away. Now, I don't believe in making this enormous ask and knowing you're going to come down here, but you're asking, for something way up here. Be reasonable. I mean, you got to you got to know your value, and the adding taxing, that's valid for sure. But what I do when I go into negotiation is I kind of I want to prioritize my ask, and I want to do it in a manner in which I have 3 different buckets. So the first one are the have to have. So these are the things that I absolutely have to have for this negotiation to be a success. I have to have these things. So in that bucket, I want them to be like, those are the things that are going to align with my values like that are very, very important to me. I'm not willing to sacrifice. So you really want to keep that as short as possible, because these are the, I joke, these are the Nancy Sinatra, boots are made for walk. If I don't get these, I walk. So keep those as short as possible. The second one are your helpful haves. I'm sorry. Yeah, your helpful haves. And so those are going to improve your situation. They have some value. They're going to improve your situation somehow. That's probably the area where you're going to be negotiating the most. There's most creativity in those. And then kind of the third one would be like your hopeful haves. So if I could get this, that'd be great. If I don't, it's fine. They're kind of sacrificial lambs. The thing with your hopeful haves is you always want to have a reason. If you're asking me for a change, or you ask me for that and I say why, and you can't tell me, you lose a little bit of authority from where I'm standing. Because, like, well, you're just asking stuff to changes just to change things, and that's never cool, even if the reason's kind of little, but knowing that you can give those away. So yeah, I believe that you should have things in those three categories, and that you should have things that you are willing to give away, but again, just make sure that there is some sort of reason for it.
Okay, I love that. I love the way that you've simplified that. So it's the have to haves or your non-negotiables, right? Because
Right.
you will walk. Your helpful haves, the things that will really enhance your life and allows you to be a little bit more creative.
Mm-hmm.
And then the hopeful haves would be like the Uber XL to
Yeah,
the
exactly.
airport
Yeah.
and whatever else. Okay, I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. So we're going to move into the Blitz section here. But before we do that, I just wanted to share, for those of you who are watching live on either of the platforms, or if you're even listening to the podcast and, you've enjoyed this conversation or you have questions, well, we have a couple more minutes. So feel free, for those of you who are watching live, ask your questions. For those of you who are listening to the podcast episode, we will give you information on how to connect with Lynn, at following this. And of course, if you want to connect with me or want to learn more about She Leads Network, you can do so by either sending me a direct message at support@sabinegideon.com, or you can go directly on to sheleadsnetwork.com to learn more. So with that, we have our little Blitz section here. So I have 3 questions for you. And I think there's a fourth in there, but not part of the Blitz. So we'll start with, as you think about, where you are today, all that you've learned and all that you teach, if you could go back to a younger version of yourself who didn't know all this information, what advice would you give her that you think would have been, either pivotal or a game changer for her?
I think I would have told her to reframe how I view failure, because I think when I was early in my career, I thought, and part of that is kind of being a type A and, wanting some perfectionism there. Like, you either win or you lose. Like, you either.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, I know you don't, right? That makes total sense. So I think in my early career, I saw, like, if you failed, I saw it as more like a tattoo, like it was with you forever. And now I view it more as a bruise. You learn from it. You either, you win or you learn, is the mindset I have now. It's only a failure if you can't figure out a lesson. And there's always a lesson in there. So I think I really would have, again, kind of looked at the things I was fearing and really just done a deeper dive. Like, don't be afraid of the things you're afraid of. Like, get in there and figure it out. And it's kind of like, turning on the lights in a room. All of a sudden, it's less scary when you really do a deep dive. So I think it would have reframed fear, and certainly fear of failure for sure. Because I think that would have led to more of a don't ask, don't get mentality, and making me ask more, because I think, the less fear there would have been, the more I would have been raising my hand. And the more, part of that is just, part of that is just age, I don't know if someone may have told me that when I was, 25. I don't know. Some of that just is kind of experience and going through it. But I certainly would hope that someone out there, if they can make that pivot now, I think it's only going to help you in the long run.
Oh yeah, maturity and missteps is like the best teacher.
Right.
But I love the way that you frame failure, because oftentimes we hear it from the perspective of, fail forward, or even just to look at, like, yeah, if you're not failing, then you're not growing. But I love the way that you've positioned it, where it's like, you know what, from a failure, like it's only a failure if you don't learn something from it. And then the other one that they usually put out there is it's only a failure if you don't get back up, or if you don't, try again, right? If you just decide to stop. But I feel like the looking for the lesson in the failure or the perceived failure is probably a more empowering place to be, especially for our type A's,
Right.
versus the it's only a failure if you give up or if you don't, move forward. Cause that I don't know about you, but that can have the tendency to make people to like push towards things that they don't even necessarily want,
Yeah,
or
exactly.
desire.
Yeah, or to just not try at all because like if I'm gonna fail, I don't want to do it at all,
Yeah.
because why risk it? So I think really the key is, and I'm trying to learn this. This is one of my key words for this year is resiliency. Is really focusing on the resiliency because say you enter in something you're afraid you're gonna fail, you get in it, you do fail. The lesson might be that's not where you're supposed to head. So it's not get up and march on and keep doing it and doing it. Don't keep putting your head up against the wall. Like the lesson could be like, oh, this isn't where I was supposed to go. This is a sign for me to pivot and do something else. The key is I think being resilient and being um, reflective and enough to take a minute and say, what do I really want out of the situation? Do I want to keep going? If I didn't fail, is that really where I wanted to head? Or is this a kind of the universe saying, hey, maybe this isn't where you're supposed to be right now and it's time to pivot?
Yeah, I love that. I could spend another 10 minutes just talking about failure and that
I
shift,
know it.
especially when it comes to women, and
Yeah.
how we, it becomes so much of a gut punch, if you
Yeah.
will,
Yeah.
to our entire worth, versus looking at it from a different perspective or lens. So we talked about what you would share with, a past version of yourself. As you look back, right, like you've been doing this work for a while, you've been sharing this message, you've been empowering, people, men, women in the workforce, in business, to be able to advocate for themselves, to be able to speak up. You look back 30, 40, 50, 60, however many years from now, and you look at the work that you've done and you've created and you've been able to accomplish. What do you want that narrative to be?
For me, it happens now. I'll have people that'll touch base and be like, "Hey, that actually worked." It's when they had that thought and they'll say, "Oh, I wonder if they would. I wonder if I could, dot, dot, dot," whatever it is. And that they took that action and they made the ask. For me, that's the best, is when I've empowered people to make the ask and adopt that don't ask, don't get mindset. I just light up. I get so excited because they get so excited, be like, "Oh my gosh, I asked for this and I got it." Like, "I know. That's why I'm here." So that's really for me, that's the legacy is that if people say, "Hey, she taught me that I could make the ask and I didn't need to wait for someone to tell me I had permission to ask." That's a win for me.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And then last but not least, I believe that as leaders, we should be readers and
Yep.
consistently growing. So with that, are there any outside of your own book, of course, are there any books that have been pivotal for you in terms of your learning and your development? And it could be business books or related to negotiation.
Yeah, actually, one of the first ones that I read pretty early on in my career that I still try to read every year or so, is Susan Jeffers' Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway." It
Mm.
really walks you through identifying those fears, what to do, like tangible steps to take. It's a very helpful, pragmatic book. And then the second one that I'm just about ready to finish, and I'm a little late to the party. I know it's been popular for a while, but is Mindset by Carol Dweck. And I love that because it talks so much about the importance of having a growth mindset. I'm obsessed right now about neuroplasticity and the neural pathways and how you can change your brain. I just think that is fascinating. But how much your mindset can really change the reality of what you're working with, and it just makes things so much more open for you to be creative when you have the right mindset. And certainly, I have a freshman in high school, and so every day we're talking about mindset and what's good mindset versus bad mindset. So that I think is really helpful. Like in any stage in your career, it's to really be self-reflective and think like, how am I thinking about this, and what kind of mindset do I have going into this, and what needs to be changed.
Yeah. I've been on a mindset kick as well, and especially for the preparation of this entire series, like reading all these books around money, around mindset, all of that. What do you call it? You just said it.
Resiliency? No.
Not resiliency. I'll figure that out. But nonetheless, right? Just
Yeah.
how we can our neural pathways. Thank you,
Yes. Yes.
mine.
Neural pathways. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you for finally showing up for me. Nonetheless, right? Our neural pathways, and even as you get deeper, uh, we're not talking necessarily deep mindset and deep spiritual here, but it all goes back to fundamentally who you believe you are, what
Mhm.
you're capable of doing, and how you create a life around you that reflects what it is that you believe about yourself.
Yeah.
And so one of the other guests, we talked a little bit deeper about that you know mindset. I think I've heard it 80-85%, but I keep quoting 80% because I feel like that's the average. But 80% of success is your mindset. The 20%
Mhm.
is execution. But we've been conditioned and we've been taught for so long that it's about what's the strategy, what's the plan, what are the steps that you're going to take. Meanwhile, people are moving forward and facing resistance, or not able to achieve their goals, and they're giving up, and they think, okay, this isn't achievable and I'll just settle here. Where it's like, no, you need to first believe that whatever it is that you're trying
Yeah.
to move towards is possible for you and that you're worthy of it. And as you face resistance, not push harder towards whatever the external thing is, but look within to see, okay, where am I resisting within myself? What do I need to shed? What do I need to let go so that I can move forward and, get over this hump? But I can go on that tangent for a long time too. So I love the fact that you brought up mindset. Did you want
Yeah.
to say
Well,
something?
well, the thing too, I was thinking about in terms of finance, I think, mindset, I used to have, more of a mindset of scarcity. And if you got something more, then that means I got less. Where I think now in terms of especially towards finances, I'm like, it's not just one pie, like there are multiple pies. So, I can have the mindset that it's not that I need to squirrel away finances and squirrel away money and do all this, but if I try to look at it like, hey, where's the opportunity for me to grow? Where's the opportunity for me to add value somewhere else? It kind of changes the ebb and flow of kind of how money's coming at me because I'm opening it up and I'm not just so closed that the mindset is like, there's only so much out there. I got to get what I can before anyone else gets it. It's, not scarcity, but, a larger, bigger like view of kind of finances and where it's coming from for me.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Lynn, thank you so much. This has been such a wonderful conversation. But of course, before I let you go, if you would, as people are watching live, or they're watching the replay, or they're listening to the podcast episode, and they want to connect with you to help build their confidence and build
Mhm.
their why, where can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, very easy to find. You can find me on LinkedIn. It's my first name's Elizabeth, so Lynn Price on LinkedIn, or my website, which is lynnpriceconsulting.com. And of course, my book is available on Amazon and other retailers as well online. It's the easiest place to find it. It's a very quick read. It's not. I'm an attorney by trade, but it's not written as an attorney. It's not written for attorneys. It's a very quick, easy read that will go through the formula, the 3 R's, to kind of review the fears and how to overcome them, and also talk about um, environments where you can practice, because again, when you get a quick win, it helps your confidence. So I don't want you to practice on a big salary negotiation. But if you practice, if you're doing a chat online, or if you're buying something online and they have a chat function, go over there and say, hey, do you have any discount codes? Or, is there anything you can do for first time buyer? It's not the 10% you might get. It doesn't matter what you get. It's the fact that you're practicing making that ask. So that's what I encourage people to do. And certainly in the meantime, you know where to find me. So look forward to hearing from anybody who would want to discuss this more.
I love that advice. I remember I used to have a coach that was just like, ask you go to the grocery store, ask, do you have coupons? Right? Like
Yeah.
it was just her mindset of no matter what she was being charged, she was going to ask or try to negotiate it down.
Yeah.
Which is an amazing skill. Uh,
Mhm.
not there yet. Um, so for those of you who are watching live, thank you so much for joining. For those of you who are listening on the podcast, the links to the book recommendations that Lynn shared, as well as her own book, in addition to her website, and her LinkedIn link will be in the show notes. So be sure to check that out and connect with her. And we will be back next week with another amazing female leader, expert in the space of finances or negotiations and money with regards to women. So with that, have a great rest of the day. Thank you so much, and we'll be back next week. Take care.
Thank you so much, Steve.